forgiveness is a way of living. You need to be able to forgive people to be able to live.
It is said that not to forgive imprisons one in the past, your past, my past, whereas forgiveness frees the forgiver and allows one...
It was during a tour we were doing in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it was around 2009, I think, and we were walking around the city, and of course it was 10 years after the war, and we met a lot of people who had had experiences in the war, who had lost family, and there was one guy in particular who had lost his father, and the killer of his father was living across the river. He was Bosniak and the killer was Croatian. And we asked him, how could you live with that? And he said, well, I've forgiven him. And we were kind of floored at the time, because how could you forgive someone for doing that? But he authentically had managed to forgive this person. So at that point we decided, we asked ourselves, wouldn't this be a great concept for doing a production? All these questions around forgiveness, you know, when do you forgive? Is it always right to forgive? Are there instances where you could be doing harm to forgive? And it started from there to develop from these questions. Well, I think, you know, for a long time we've always been interested in themes that talk about more of the essence of what the human experience is. So even if we did, as Modern Time Stage Company, if we did like a Shakespeare, we would do often things like Macbeth, things like Hamlet, where the characters, where the situations, they really go deeply into what it is to exist as a human being and whether we're in control of our fate or not. And those kind of themes come out in forgiveness. Ultimately, the more you look at it, the more you have to see, well, is there anything controlling right or wrong? Like, why do we have to do right or wrong? Why do we have to do good? Or why do we have to do bad? And that comes down to that question of existence and fate, and is there a divine being or not? Are we alone? All of these questions came into it. So it fits very well thematically into the history of the company's work. Yeah.
One more time. I'm a Viking.
Well, that's it, you know, like people often when they think of forgiveness, they think of it in terms of a touchy-feely, like you all have to forgive and forget and all of that, but we never started from that approach, and the more we went into it, the less we felt that we could possibly even talk about that. I mean, of course, we're not against peace, we're not against reconciliation, that would be silly, but at the same time, who is anybody to say somebody should forgive or that we all should forgive? It's very, very individual and very, very complex. By the end of the day, when you talk about forgiveness, you get to the point where you're not even sure yourself, like, is it possible? Is forgiveness possible? So that we were very strongly presented in the piece. We give no answers. We have no moral as artists towards forgiveness. It's simply, we present situations, we examine the concept in many different ways, and then we allow the audience to think their way through it at the same time. So it's quite interactive.
And did this person do anything nice for you? Make you smile or laugh? Help you out of a jam? If so, write it down.
Some have reacted in really strong ways, you know, like some have been really upset because they come from a country like, say, Iran, where that if you forgive a regime for something, they'll just do it more, you know, so you're a bit of a sucker to forgive. Others have very cathartic reactions. We had one critic come who had his ex-girlfriend in the audience, who he hadn't seen since they split up, and it was a bad breakup. So his whole experience of watching the show was in relationship to his ex-girlfriend and what had happened to them. And it was a profound experience. He wrote one of the best reviews that we've ever got. He didn't talk at all about the show, but he talked about what the show meant to him, which for us as artists is an amazing experience.
Picture in your mind's eye all the negative thoughts and all the anger leaving your head until there is no...
Yeah, we've we've always worked with physicality in all of our pieces, and there's a lot of non-verbal elements that we bring when we do adaptations of classical work. We change the script, we remove sections, we tell things in a visual manner. Image is very strong for the director of all the pieces, Sohaib Parsa. Sound and light and image is pretty integral to his work. So we always try to explore it from that fashion. With forgiveness, we went a little bit further than we normally do because it's a devised creation, so we were just starting from the concept and starting to improvise different scenes, and the dancers would come in and do work and based on some stories that Sohaib had. So it was a very, very different manner of working for us. There's many stories in it, and as we're a modernist theater, we like to tell stories. But at the same time, there's lots of new abstractness, beautiful abstractness from the inclusion of dance into it and the meeting of these two worlds. And that was a very challenging thing, but it was very necessary for us to have dance.
I hate it when you talk. I hate the way you walk. I hate your smile. I hate your style.
Well, I think from very early on, we felt that in order to really discuss the concept of forgiveness, it would be more than words could do, more than the intellect would be able to do. So we immediately went to dance, and we said, well, we have to have dance in the show. We have to have dancers to be able to embody it in an emotional way, to be able to express it in ways that words can't. So that became very important right from the beginning, and we tried to find what is the language between these two, between storytelling, between text, and between contemporary dance and sections which approach it from a more abstract, which approach the subject from a more felt position. So it was completely new for us, and it took us a long time, I think, to be able to communicate together between theater and between dance. It was tough going sometimes. It was not always an easy a task, but it was an interesting task. It was an excellent task for us as theater artists to experience. The moments of frustration, the moments of I don't know what you're saying, the moments that we have to abandon something and just give it to the dancers and let them do their thing. And vice versa, and the frustration from the dancers as well of being asked to do things that they're not used to be doing. So it was a challenging but a very beautiful process for us as artists, I think, to live through.
Iranian political purges, Rwanda, South African apartheid, the whole British Empire has to hang for their empire. Are you still with me, Chloe? No doubt, most of us in this...
What is important is working with Yannick and Christopher from Don Gnu. Immediately in 2012, when we began to work with them, it brought a whole different aesthetic to the work. Before, as artists, we had been really focusing on the seriousness, on the emotional life, on some of the tragedy. We were examining genocide, war, breakups, and all of this. And Yannick and Chris brought in something that was much lighter than that and much more ironic, which I think when dealing with this material was a great thing to have. Because if you get too serious with it, I think it's just too heavy. You can't understand it. So their influence was perfect, actually, for the piece and to develop the piece to the place that it is today. It was very important, yeah.